I'd like to tell you that today's presentation will be broadcast on Channel 2 on Tuesday, August 16th through Thursday, August 18th at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. each day, in case you've missed and you know anybody who has missed it. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Richard L. Curwin. He is a native New Englander. He grew up around the Boston area and started his teaching career in Western Massachusetts. Rick Curwin is an internationally recognized consultant and trainer specializing in behavior management for children. He has worked with parents, teachers, administrators, school personnel, and others who work for the good of children. Dr. Curwin's articles have appeared in Instructor, Learning, Educational Leadership, and his 10 books include Am I in Trouble?, Discipline with Dignity, and Rediscovering Hope. Our Greatest Teaching Strategy is another book by Dr. Curwin. He is a former junior high school English teacher, a teacher of emotionally disturbed children, and a university professor. He says his greatest learning experience continues to be raising his children. Dr. Curwin now resides out on the West Coast and in San Francisco, and it's my hope, and I guess a lot of people's hope, that if the big one ever hits, that he's on the road doing presentations like this. Before I bring Dr. Curwin up here, I just want to alert people to a meeting that was recently scheduled at Colchester Middle School for talking about the anticipated new middle school and the construction and site relationships as far as that goes. So if you can make it 7 o'clock tomorrow night at Colchester Middle School, there will be that discussion. Without any further interruption, I'd like to introduce Dr. Curwin.
Is this tethered? This is tethered, so I can go to that. Good evening. I'm glad it didn't snow tonight because I wouldn't have showed up if it did. Art says he's really hoping if the big one hits him on the road. I don't want to be on the road here if it's going to snow and freeze. Send me on the road to Hawaii or something. It's really good to be here. I'm glad there's so many parents here. I've been talking to parents now for many years, and 10 years ago there'd be 5 parents. And 6 years ago there'd be 20 parents, and now they're in the hundreds. And I think it's because people are realizing that the kids are important, and that's really nice. I've always said that Americans really love their kids, and they think they're the greatest until they have to take them home from the hospital and have to change them themselves, and then it gets more difficult. So maybe tonight we can talk about some things that will make it easier for you as parents and better for kids. There's a lot of things to talk about. What I really hope to do tonight, it's difficult with the way this is set up, but to pretend we're sitting over a cup of coffee talking about our kids. And I'll tell you about mine, and you can tell me about yours, and more informal like that. This setup isn't informal, but we can make it that way if we want to, by the way we communicate. The most important thing I want to start off with is to tell you something I believe to be true about education. Education in this country used to be its highest value. And I grew up with a mother that valued education so much that it became something almost cherished. How many of you grew up with parents like that? Today it's not true. Kids don't grow up with parents that tell them education is so important. Most of you probably do, but that's not the national norm anymore. I mean, I would rather get struck by lightning than have the teacher call my mother and say I was a bad kid. I'd rather lightning hit me right in the head and fry me. That's it. I don't have to face my mother. It wasn't that my mother would hurt me. She never would hit me. She wouldn't even yell at me. She would do something worse. She'd be disappointed in me. That was the worst that could happen. And now if a teacher says, I'm going to call your mother, the kid says, I hope you find her. I haven't seen her for a week. I mean, it's changing. And I think one thing that we can do as parents that will help more than anything is understand the true value of education. Because without education, there's going to be problems, as we can now see. Our country is becoming separated by qualities and abilities that are defined by our skills that we get from education. If people don't get a good education, they won't work. And instead of being someone that contributes to the economy, they'll be someone that drains from it, either in prison and without a good education. country in the world knows, it seems, how valuable education is by Americans. This is what it seems like to me as I travel. I think education and teaching is the most important job in this country. This is my personal opinion, because there are no other jobs without teachers. What teachers do is they make it possible to do everything else. There aren't any lawyers without teachers. There's no doctors without teachers. Yet teachers in this country are looked at as if they're nothing. But go to another country and you'd be amazed at how teachers are treated. Everybody looks to Japan as the model. Why aren't our kids as smart and as doing so well on the test scores as Japan? Well, in Japan, teachers are treated like gods. The word for teacher in Japan is sensei. It means close to God. When you go to Japan, the teachers there are exalted. They make more money than doctors and lawyers, because in Japan they're more important. So I visited this junior-senior high school in Japan, and every teacher in that school had their own copy machine. I don't know how many of you have visited classrooms lately in Vermont, as well as California, as well as everywhere. But in America, if a teacher wants to make a copy, they have to get a pass from the principal first. And I said this to the principal of this high school in Japan, and he said, "What do you mean? A teacher doesn't have their own copy machine? How can they teach?" And I said, "We can't afford it. How can you afford it?" He said, "How can we afford not to? What if the teacher has to make a copy?" And I said, "In California, we already ran out of paper." And he said, "Funny American joke, a school without paper." I said, "It's an American joke, all right, but it's not funny." He said, "But don't your doctors all have copy machines? Don't your lawyers?" I said, "Of course." He said, "Then your teachers should have them first, because they come first." That's Japanese thinking. 2 years ago, I was in Belgium, and I was at a state luncheon, and at this luncheon, there was 200 people, no Americans, no teachers, except me and my friend. And we walked in, and the first thing someone said to us, "What do you do?" We said, "We're teachers." And someone said, "Please, we'd be honored to have you at our table." And someone said, "We saw him first. We want him at our table." And they fought over us because we're teachers. It was like incredible. I thought I was in the Twilight Zone. You know, in America, they fight over teachers too. "You have him." "No, you have him." When it was over, we would give them fruit baskets. And these were incredible fruit baskets. They had wine and cheese and crackers and fruit. And anyone ever been to Belgium? You know what the best thing they make in all of Belgium? Chocolate. Lots of chocolate. It's like delicious to die for. And we were the only ones to get them. And I always thought I was stealing like an ornament. And I went up to the host and I said, "Are we supposed to take these?" He said, "Of course." I said, "No one else is getting them." And they said, "You are our honored guests." I said, "Why? Because you're Americans?" He said, "Don't be stupid." Because you're teachers. Every country on earth treats teachers the way Americans treat football players. And our economy demonstrates it. So I think we have to recognize the value of education. We need to support it. We have to stop thinking you can get education cheap. There's no cheap way to do it. If you want your kids to get jobs, if you want someone in your community not to be on welfare, the money has got to go there, or we're going to lose this country. We're losing it already, and you can see it. I mean, we are making a mistake trying to do this cheap. It can't be done cheap. I also tell people, I tell my friends, there's no job I've ever heard more difficult than teaching. It's the most difficult job I know. And they make fun of me. I mean, they say teaching isn't that hard. Anybody can teach. I said, anybody can be a surgeon, but not anybody can be a good surgeon. Anybody can teach, sure. Anybody can walk in a classroom. That doesn't mean they can be a good one. So my friends say, "You think teaching is harder than brain surgery?" I say, "No, I think teaching is much harder than brain surgery." Brain surgery, they anesthetize the brains first. When was the last time, anyone here a brain surgeon? When was the last time you ever heard a patient say, "This is boring, I want to do something else," you know? "This is stupid." When was the last time a patient in the middle of surgery punched the other patient? You know, said, "Take that, stupid." Brain surgeons do it one at a time. Teachers do it by 30. And they get them all live and active. It's tough. Give me a brain surgeon. Put them in a classroom for a week. They'll pay you to get out. How many people here are not professional teachers that have ever been in a classroom for 3-4 days? Is it easy? So it's a tough job. We can make it easier for teachers by understanding what they're going through and supporting them. And if you have a problem with our kids, telling them and working out together. If we don't become partners with our teachers, then our kids are the ones that suffer. They are not our enemies, they're our friends, and every teacher I've ever known wants parents to be involved, and not just on parent night, but when there are problems with their kids. They want to be able to call and talk and work things out. And most parents want their teachers to care for their kids. I've never seen two groups of people that needed each other more than parents and teachers, and yet the communication is carried on by some kid. Every teacher judges parents by looking at the children. He swore, what kind of parents does he have? He's dirty, what kind of parents does he have? He hit somebody, doesn't his parents teach him it's wrong? And every parent judges teachers by a kid. Kid comes home, what'd you do today? Nothing. That's what I'm paying my taxes for, nothing? My teacher's not fair. I'll take care of this for you. What's that lawyer's number? My teacher said I don't have to do any homework. Or my teacher, even worse, my teacher didn't give directions. What it doesn't say is when he gave directions, the kid was climbing on a wall somewhere and missed them. So parents say, what's wrong with those teachers? So you get parents and teachers communicating together through some kid. Does anybody see a problem here? It would be so much better if we talked to each other before, during, and after problems. I think this is a critical thing that's missing in our educational system, is parents and teachers sitting down over a cup of coffee somewhere and saying, let's talk. They both love the kids, and it can be a wonderful experience when it's done that way. It's very difficult to get together when you're on opposite sides of the negotiating table with the kid the bargaining chip. That doesn't work. I mean, if it doesn't work with baseball players and owners, when they're talking about money, it's not going to work with other kids. So I encourage this. Anyway, that's my pitch for my commercial. I believe it's important that we understand education's place and how we can help it and how education can help us. Without this, we don't go anywhere, and we stop here. And I believe this in my bottom of my heart. We have got to know this. When it comes to education and learning, I've learned more from my kids, as Art said in the introduction, than anything else. My kids were my best teachers, by far. I think they taught me more than I taught them. Now, in 1 month, approximately, I'm getting remarried. And I'm really excited. My fiancée is sitting in the back trying to hide because she's shy, but she's there somewhere. And I have 3 sons. My sons are 22, 20, and 18. Her 3 sons are 11, 6, and 5. 6 sons. She said to me when I met her, the reason God sent me to you is because he's curious if what you say works. And I'm going to make sure that you find out. And I truly love her kids. Her kids are fantastic kids. And I am learning from them. And maybe they're learning from me too. It's easier to do it when you're older than when you're younger. Because when you're older, you get a sense of perspective that you don't have when you're younger. It's so great to know. I don't have to worry about that. It's not going to make any difference anyway. It has no effect on your life. Because when you're younger, everything you think is that matters. Every year you get older, it becomes so much easier. I think wisdom is better than energy. I'm not sure, but this is what I'm coming to believe. I'd rather have wisdom than energy. Because with energy, you spend a lot of it, but you don't get anywhere. I mean, it's different. I can tell you one story that shows you how you get wisdom from experience. Not everyone that lives learns from their experiences. I always talk about teachers and say, good teachers get 10 years experience, but bad ones get 1 year experience 10 years in a row. Because we don't always learn from what happens to us. 1 year, I had a very unusual thing happen to me that really helped me understand one of my own kids and then all kids from this. It was a powerful lesson, one that hit me between the eyes. And it taught me something that goes against everything you have heard about raising children. I don't know if anybody here has ever been to a bar mitzvah or not. Has anyone here ever been to a bar mitzvah? Raise your hand if you've ever been to one. Okay, if you haven't, go to one. They're really fun. They're great parties. When a Jewish child is about to be bar mitzvahed, this is a very stressful time in his life or her life. It's a bar mitzvah. Because they have to get before a group bigger than this of people that they know and don't know, up to 400 or 500, and read Hebrew, which is hard to do. They have to do this in front of their mother, their grandmother, their friends, and it's stressful. They put it off to the last minute to learn how because they don't want anything to do with it. When my oldest son was taking his lesson so he could read this, he refused to practice. And I was really getting on him. We lived in a house upstairs and downstairs with an intercom system where I could eavesdrop on him without him knowing it. But he knew every time I did it. So he made a tape of himself practicing, put it into the system. He played Nintendo while I was thinking he was practicing. They're very tough to beat, you know, they're smarter than us. Anyway, the hard thing is the pressure, but the great thing are the presents you get. Some kids get enough presents, they plan to go to college on them. It's incredible what bar mitzvah presents are like, because everyone is so proud of the kid. The kid knows this and uses it and, says, what are you going to get me for my bar mitzvah? So-and-so's getting me this, like trying to play us off against each other. Well, the year that my middle son, Andy, who's one of the sweetest kids that ever lived, he's a true empath. An empath is someone who actually can feel someone else's feelings and feel them himself. Andrew is the kind of kid that literally cries during sad TV commercials. I mean, if the commercial's sad, is that so sad? I said, it's a commercial, so what, it's sad. His greatest sense of pleasure is watching old Groucho Marx movies because they make him laugh. He loves them. So when he had his bar mitzvah, he really wanted a good present, especially from his dad. We were very close. But I moved to California. This was the year I went. I split up with my wife. I moved to California. He was on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. My income was literally cut in half. My expenses doubled. And I had no money. I mean, it was poor. Never in my adult life had I had such little money. I don't know if any of you ever went through a year when you didn't know if you'd have enough money to eat, literally. But that's what it was like. I was counting pennies, borrowing money, struggling. Has anyone ever gone through a time like this? Not, as an adult, not in college, I mean. Teachers do this every year because they get paid for 10 months, but they work for 12. And there's a 2-month gap. If they don't save their money, they're dead. It's a hard time because of the way that works. In any case, I had no money, and I had a kid getting bar mitzvah, and he calls and says, Dad, what are you going to get me? And I want to get him something really good, and I can't afford very much. So I said, well, what do you want? And he says, I want a real California skateboard. Now, how many people have ever bought the kid a skateboard? Have you ever done this? Well, he wanted a Santa Cruz skateboard, which is like the Porsches of skateboards. It's like the best skateboard. And I said, I don't know if I can afford it, but I'll let you know. So I'm reading the paper, and there's a skateboard, Santa Cruz skateboard, on sale for $60. Well, I can afford $60. I mean, it's my kid's bar mitzvah. So I call him back and say, we can do it. He says, oh, I'm so happy. So he comes out to California about a month later, and he's out with me for the rest of the summer. And I pick him up at the airport, and he says, let's go get the skateboard. I said, can't we get home from the airport first? He didn't even want to get his bags. He wanted to go right to the skateboard store. I said, how about waiting an hour? He says, no, let's go, I want my skateboard. But we waited 2 days. So we go to the skateboard store. He's planning it and thinking of it and talking about it. He's dreaming skateboard dreams. And he's really wanting the skateboard. And we get to the store, and I have the shock of my life. Everyone who raised their hand about buying skateboards knows what's going to happen. The rest of you would be shocked as I was. They don't sell skateboards whole. It's a la carte. They don't even come with wheels. See, I used to buy cars. They have extras, air conditioning, but wheels come with the car. But not skateboards. It's like, this doesn't have any wheels. The board was $60, but no wheels, no screws to put the wheels in, no decal that says Santa Cruz. That's $20 extra. And I'm starting to panic because I don't have any money, and I want my kid to get a skateboard. I said, how about your wheels? He said, well, do you want the cheap ones or the safe ones? How many people have ever visited San Francisco? Usually have been to San Francisco. For the rest, those who haven't been there, we have hills. They are real. The hills are so tough in San Francisco that you can literally open your door, and if you take a bad step, you roll for 20 blocks before you can get up. They are like this. I live on a hill like this, or I used to live on a hill like this, that went right into the ocean. Safe or cheap? Tough decision. Well, the cheap ones are $5 a wheel, and the safe ones are $25 a wheel. We're at $160, and we haven't even screwed them in yet. I mean, this is scary, and I'm getting a headache. Some of you probably get a headache just thinking about this if you did it for yourself. It's really frightening. How much is this going to cost? So I said to the man, tell me how much it's going to cost me to buy my son a skateboard that he won't get hurt on, and I don't want to make one more decision. Give me a number, I'll say yes or no. He said, we don't do it that way. I said, I do. Give me a number, I'll make a decision. I can't go through this, just say a number. So he takes out his adding machine and he goes boom, 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 $260. Can't do it, there's just no way. So I look at Andrew, and his lower lip starts to quiver, and a tear comes to his eye and he says, it's okay, Dad, I didn't want one anyway. So I said to myself, if the government can do it, so can I. I mean, the federal government does it every day. I'll take it, I don't care if I have any money. And I took out my credit card and prayed it didn't max out. I mean, I really was concerned. I'm thinking, who can I borrow money from to cover this? My best friend loaned me money to get him airfare, so I couldn't ask him again. I was feeling really sick. Has anybody in this room ever bought something that you knew you could not afford, and you bought it anyway, and in the process you got such a raging headache that it made you go blind? Has anyone ever gone blind? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, oh, what am I doing? I was so worried that I signed the credit card, but I couldn't read it. I went blind. I had no idea what I signed for. I just signed it, took a bag of things, which I hope was a complete skateboard, and got in the car and drove home in a sweat. Andrew is checking out his skateboard, and he says, hey, Dad, they made a mistake. They only charged you $60. And I felt relief. I said, oh, thank you. I said, this is God's way of saying you really deserve a skateboard. But by the time I got home, I didn't believe that anymore. That was a dumb thing to say. That was a mistake. Because I love my kids, and I value honesty. My mother was so honest that one day we were walking home, and she saw a $10 bill, and she brought it to the police station in case someone claimed it. I said, Ma, they don't claim $10 bills. You know, someone lost it. She said, someone might need this. I said, we need it. She says, but it's not ours. It doesnn't matter if we need it. It's someone else's. She brings it to the police station. The sergeant says, lady, are you nuts? A $10 bill? Who's going to claim it? She said, I don't want it. It's not mine. I would be wrong to take this. She never once would have played the lottery, because she never thought you should get something for nothing. It just was against what she believed in. She said, if you want money, you need to earn it. So I was raised like this. And I got into the house and I said, Andrew, I really want to tell you that this isn't God's way of saying you deserve the skateboard. If we keep this money, it's stealing and it's wrong. I said that because I was pressured, but it's not what I believe in my heart. I made a mistake. And I want to pay the money. I'm going to call them right now and tell them they made a mistake. We'll come back tomorrow with the rest of the money. He started to cry. And I mean, tears are rolling down his cheeks. And I said, why are you crying? He couldn't hardly talk. He's like crying through the tears. Talking through the tears. He said, because I was so happy when they made a mistake, because I knew you couldn't afford this. I know you can't afford this on me, and I felt so guilty making you spend all your money on my present that I was really happy for you. But if you didn't pay for it, I would never have used it. I would have locked it in a closet and left it there and never touched it again. And I'm crying because I am so happy because I want to use my skateboard, and now I can. So he went in the bedroom to call them. He comes out 5 minutes later. He's put the skateboard together. He comes in, does one of those things with the kick and do flips. He grabs his, what do you think, Dad? Isn't it great? I said, it's great. What did they say at the store when you called him? And he said, they were so glad I called, they offered me a reward. I said, I don't need a reward. I got my skateboard. I don't need anything more than that. That's all I want. Well, I learned two things from this event that have never left me. It happened 7 years ago now, because Andrew's 20. The first thing I learned goes against every conventional wisdom that I've ever heard. It goes against everything I've been taught as a professional. The first thing you learn when you hear about raising children is when they do something wrong, the faster you do something about it, the better it is. That the longer you wait to intervene with a kid who's making a mistake, the less effective you are. Have you heard that before? Don't wait, they say. Who's the they that says this? Are they parents? That's what I wonder. Because I waited in the car from the time I said, this is God's way of saying this is your skateboard, to the time we got to the house. I had time to reflect, to think, to understand what I did. I self-corrected because nobody interfered with me. If my mother was sitting there, you know what she would have said? You can't do that, that's wrong. And I said, it's their fault, it's their problem. Maybe they'll learn not to make mistakes next time. I'm helping them, I'm saving them money, because next time they can make a mistake for $2,000. And they'll be more careful. I mean, I would have justified it because my mother would have corrected me, and now I would have had to defend myself because I couldn't, you know, I'm not going to let her win. This is right. We'd have a discussion, and she'd take her position, I'd take mine, and I would have not learned to think about my decisions. I would have reacted to my mother, not my values. By waiting, I had time to realize this was not the right thing to do because I have values. And I'm wondering, if we self-correct for children, do they learn how to self-correct for themselves? The faster we step in to do something, when do they reflect? When do they think? When do they consider? When do they learn it's even something worth doing? If somebody is always telling you what right and wrong is, do you have to do it for yourself? The answer is no. There's a phenomenon that happens with people that's really strange. It's hard to explain it except to say that if somebody worries for you, you don't have to do it yourself anymore. How many people in this room have a responsibility to take out the trash in your house? Raise your hand. If you don't take out the trash, 3 weeks later, someone might notice it. Hey, it smells in here. What's going on? But they won't do it for you because it's not their responsibility. Is that true? Anyone ever forgot it for a day or two? It's still there. A couple years ago, I went to London with a friend of mine, and I'd been to London many times before. He had never been there. But he was a map studier, and I always get lost. I got lost coming here tonight. Not once, but twice. It was really amazing. After I corrected, I got lost again. My fiance says I get lost in my own bathtub if I'm not careful. Anyway, he memorized all of the routes on the Underground. Anyone here ever been to London? The Underground is fantastic. He memorized them. Within 3 days, I was asking him for directions for places he'd never been to that I'd been to 5 or 6 times because I didn't know how to get there. The smarter he got, the stupider I got. The more we worry for them, the less they think about it. If we worry about every decision a kid makes, how are they going to learn for themselves? Now, if I see a kid hitting somebody, I'm not going to say to myself, gee, maybe a week from now he'll realize this was wrong. I mean, I have to step in and do something. But sometimes we have to step back and let kids see what they create. This will occur to our advantage when there's a lesson inherent in the behavior. And I'm going to show you this in a few minutes. I want to get to the second lesson of this event and come back to it. The second thing I learned from this is that kids watch us. They watch everything we do. They don't hear us. They watch us. And kids really become their parents in many ways. As I get older, I'm more and more like my mother than I ever was before. My father died young, so he wasn't much of an influence. He died when I was 4. Every year I say, am I becoming my mother? How many of you are becoming your mother? I mean, isn't it amazing? You say things, you said, I'm never going to say that. And now you say them. She's watching, she's laughing. She says, aha, we got another one. You know, it's great. They watch us. And one thing we have to do to be effective parents is to make sure we treat them the way that we want them to treat others. This is a major responsibility, and it's impossible to do. So the leeway you need for yourself in order to survive should be the same leeway you give them. Now let me give you some examples. How many people here do not want their kids fighting and hitting other kids? Then you can't hit them. How many of you don't want your kids to be sarcastic, rude, and to swear at people? Then you can't do it to them. How many of you want your kids to be good listeners? Then you got to listen to them. because they do what we teach them to do. And the reason parents get so mad at their kids' behavior is because somehow we know that we taught them it somewhere. Or they've seen us do it. They learned it somewhere. I'll give you an example of my own stupidity or inadequacy or whatever it is, because I'm just like everybody else. I know all about this stuff. I still do the same things because it's hard to learn it. I say to my kids, dinner, let's go, it's ready. And they say, in a minute. And I go right up to them and say, I said now. I didn't say in a minute, put that away. And I shut the TV off. I said now, stop watching television, now. Sound familiar? So the kids come in grumbling, I want to see the end. That doesn't fit a cartoon, you couldn't wait 2 minutes? I said now. 2 hours later, hey Dad, come see this. In a minute. Where did they learn in a minute? From me. It's really hard. So, either I never do anything with them unless I want them to do it, or when they make a mistake, I want them to have the same amount of flexibility to correct it as I want them to give me when I make a mistake. That way it works. And it's hard to be a role model for children, but I'd rather be the role model than Charles Barkley or any athlete or any politician or anybody in the media that they look up to, because I want them to see what I think values are. And it isn't enough for them to value people who are famous and rich and have things. I want them to value people who value honesty, integrity, other people, things like this. I think America is losing its vision of what values are. Right now, we're in a country where it's more important to get things than to believe things. And I want to see that change. It's just really frustrating to me to see kids say things like, I can do anything I want if I don't get caught. Or, if you want me to do something, what will you give me? I don't like this. It really bothers me. I want to see kids do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. If anyone's watching or not, if they get caught or not, or if they get something for it or not, is irrelevant. Do good because it's good to do good. That's important. And that's what in my workshop with teachers, I tell them that every single day, teach children to think, not simply to avoid punishment. Because I want a country with adults who care about each other and get this country back to what it was before we became so centered on making money. Hard to do. So how do we teach kids to behave this way, to value things rather than to say what's in it for me? Well, it goes back to what I said to you before. We need to set up structures so that when they make mistakes, they learn from them without our telling them. And we do this by giving them consequences when they break rules. This way they learn from them. And I want to spend the rest of this evening, or a large part of it, talking about consequences and how they can be used. When we punish children, we do this because we want them to stop misbehaving. The goal is noble and it's a correct one. But there's actually two basic flaws in a punishment approach to children. It's the same two basic flaws in a reward approach to children. One basic flaw is, if you punish somebody, the hope is they won't like the punishment, so they won't do the misbehavior. I mean, if you do something I don't like and I whack you and it hurts, you won't do it again because you don't want to get whacked. Isn't that what we hope? There's a problem. There's two ways to avoid getting whacked. One is, don't misbehave. The other is, don't get caught. The second is, punishments don't teach. Let me give you an example. I'm not sure how far I can go because I'm wired here. This way. If I gave you a box of computer parts, all taken apart, and I said, put this together in 1/2 hour so that it works, could you do it?
Nope.
She said, no. Well, what if I gave you a time out to your room for 10 minutes? Then could you do it?
No.
What if I gave you a lecture on how you should listen to your father? Then could you do it? What if I took away the car for 2 weeks? Then could you do it? No allowance for 2 weeks. Then could you do it? All right, I'm going to smack you. Then could you do it? The answer is no. You know why? Because I forgot to teach you how to do it. Punishments can let you know that something's wrong, but they tell you how to do it right? No. They just say stop. If you want a kid to stop doing something, you got to replace it with something else. So first I teach you how to do it. Then then the answer is yes, I can do it. You taught me how. Assuming that I could possibly do this, since I know less than you about it, I don't know if I'm the right teacher. But the point is, punishments don't teach. They simply say, stop. It's not enough. You got to teach. Take something away, give something back. But consequences teach. I'll give you some examples. Okay, my favorite example of a simple one is dinner time. Raising my kids, I didn't mind doing the dishes. Actually, being a single parent, I like doing the dishes. Anybody here a single parent or have ever been a single parent? Dishes is great when you're a single parent. I'll tell you why. Because your kids are shadows. You can't escape them. No matter where you go, they're there. You can't even make a phone call without them hearing everything you say. You have to go to the closet and slam it to get any privacy whatsoever. But if you say it's time to do the dishes, they hide from you. So you get freedom without guilt. It's fantastic. So I don't mind doing dishes. And I don't even have a dishwasher, or I didn't at the time of this tale. I recently moved, so things have changed in my house a little bit. But we had no dishwasher. I was it. And I loved it. It was really nice. But I hated taking the dishes from the table that my kids left there and having to take them into the kitchen. They should take their own dishes from the table to the kitchen. And I tried to get them to remember, don't forget your dishes, you left one. All the way from doing things like, get back in there now. You forgot your dishes. To grabbing them and saying, forget something. To yelling, to... this sounds familiar, doesn't it? So the whole thing. Go to your room for 10 minutes, time out. Next time, bring your dishes. Don't forget tomorrow night, I'm watching. The whole thing. This doesn't work because kids don't leave the dishes to make you mad. They leave them because they're in such a hurry, they don't even think about it. So at the moment of impact, they have forgotten. If they've forgotten the dishes, they've forgotten the warning as well. I mean, they don't care. They're too busy. They don't say, here's a great way to make Dad go nuts. It's like, I want to go play. Let's go. Dinner's over. So I couldn't get him to stop until I understood the difference between punishment and consequences. Punishments say, don't do it anymore. Consequences teach. So I came up with a great answer, and it works. I never said a word to them. I did not interfere. I didn't do anything to interfere whatsoever. I was like the story with the bar mitzvah. I didn't say anything. I gave them time to think. Of course, the next night when they went to eat, I hadn't removed the dishes either. So they eat off the same dishes because I didn't do anything. Hey, Dad, this dish is really disgusting because it has last night's dinner on it. I haven't washed it yet. I said, it really is. You want more potatoes? See how this works? We pull back instead of rescue and then get mad, and things start to change. It's easier to let them see what happens when dishes don't get done than yelling or spanking and hitting and then doing it for them. That's a lot more work for us. Now, we can do this with many cases, but there's a limit. We can't do it in every case. Sometimes we must find a different way because the danger of letting things go is too great. For example, I would never, ever say it's a good idea to let a kid burn his hand on the stove so when the stoves are hot. I'd rather whack the hand and say, don't touch the stove. And I don't hit, but I'd rather do that than let him burn himself. I mean, I'd rather tell a 3-year-old that he's going to get a whack in the bottom than allow him to run across a crowded street. So there are limits to how far this can go. When you let it go and they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, we have to pull the reins back a little bit because that's too far. We don't want life lessons to maim. But if the danger is only to their ego or minimal, then why not let them experience reality? That's the best teacher. I want to give you a bunch of examples. I'm going back to California Friday night. I haven't been back for 3 weeks, so I'm really ready to go home. It's been a long stretch. And I'm anxious to see my house. Our flight leaves at 5:05, I believe it is. What if we get to the airport at 5:30? What happens? Miss my flight. So the ticket agent says, Curwin, get over here. Write down 1,000 times you won't be late for airports. You think this is going to help me? I'm just never going to fly United again. That's all. I'll say I'll take Delta. Who cares? We'll have an argument if anyone ever said that to me. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm stupid if I have to spend another night away from home. I can see my own stupidity very well without any help from anybody. Has anybody in this room ever been late getting to an airport not because you had a connecting, but you went to the airport late yourself? Who's missed a flight because of this at least once? The next time you went to the airport, you were there 2 hours early. No one had to tell you anything. Because life teaches you. Has anybody in this room ever been to Germany or a Germanic-speaking country? If you go to the train station in Germany or Tokyo or Zurich or any of these countries, the train's supposed to leave at 11:38, and 11:39 the train is gone. They're not there. You missed it. This is why people from Germanic-speaking countries and many countries in Asia are always on time. But you go to a Romantic-speaking country, like France or Italy or Spain, you go to the train station, they give you a glass of wine and say, if the train comes, we'll tell you. This is why people from these countries basically think it's polite to be a little late. Because the consequences of our actions teach us what we should do next. It's not the adult telling you, it's the result of what you do that teaches you. Well, Andrew, my wonderful child I mentioned to you earlier, is one of the nicest childs that ever lived. I truly think this. I'm going to be away 10 days before our wedding, and my son Andrew at 20 is going to fly out 10 days early to just do errands for my fiancée so she doesn't have to do them. I mean, that is really sweet. But he's the world's biggest slob. Marty always didn't want him. He said, I love him, but he's such a slob. Do I have to have, can I lock him in the room or something? He's the world's biggest slob. No one is bigger. If there was an Olympic slob team, he'd be captain. He is a tough kid. When he was growing up and he was in first grade, I had a major problem with him because he never had his sneakers when it was time to go to school. Anyone ever have a kid like this? Daddy, I can't find my sneakers. I'm really sorry. I won't do it anymore. Can you help me find them? Now with him, it was really difficult because he was such a slob that he never took them off at the same time. He'd take off one and run around for another half hour and then take off the other. Finding one was only half of it. Then you had to go find the other. They could be in different houses. I mean, usually you find your sneakers, but it was one, then the other. It's really hard. And this was driving me crazy. Every single morning, Daddy, I can't find my sneakers. I'm really sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise. So I punished him. I took away his dessert. I took away television. I took away the Atari, which is what they had before Nintendos. I took away talking to on the phone. I'd go outside and play catch with his brothers. He had a watch. You couldn't play. I yelled at him. I scolded him. I did everything I could think of. I never hit him, but I wanted to. I mean, it took restraint not to whack him right across his face. No sneakers? Pow! Take that! But I don't believe in hitting because I don't believe in a violent society. I think it's an error. At one time, I think it had value, but I think as we get into more and more violent times, there's a real penalty for it. So I don't believe in it. I mean, some people have a real problem with this with me, but we can talk about it later if you want. So there we are. Andrew can't get his sneakers. I can't get him to have them, and I've punished him. Now, I am triply frustrated by this. I mean, I am hurt by this because I had just published the first book on discipline I ever wrote in my life. And I can't even get my own kid to get her sneakers. What a failure I am. I mean, there are too many people who write books on how to do something. They don't do it for themselves, and now I was becoming one of them. I used to hate those things. Ever see how-to books? It says how to make money? And the guy who makes money by writing books how to make money, people buy them. That's how he makes his money. These things frustrate me when so-called experts don't even do it for themselves. And I had become one, and I hated it. So I called my friend, who was my co-author, and he said, Rick, come over here, we'll talk about this. And I went to my friend's house, and he said, you know something? I want you to look at this picture, and you tell me what's wrong with it, because something's wrong with this picture. You figure out what's wrong. There is a man who makes a living going to schools and telling teachers and administrators to use consequences, not punishments, because punishments don't work. He writes a book, and he writes a chapter that says use consequences, not punishments, because punishments don't work. He meets with parents. All over the world he talks to parents. He says, don't use punishments, they don't work, use consequences. And then he goes home and he punishes his own kid. It doesn't work, and he doesn't know why. See anything wrong here? So obviously it's like a light that goes off. You know what I think our friends do for us more than anything else? They tell us when we're dumb because no one else has the courage. Thank God for friends that tell us this. My friends they tell me this a lot, it seems, lately. I don't know. I'm beginning to wonder. So I go home and I go up to Andrew and I say, Andrew, tomorrow morning, you're going to school at 8:15. I really hope you have your sneakers. Good luck. I'll have them, Dad, I promise. Next morning, Dad, I can't find them. This is going to be the last time, I promise. I'll never do it again. Please don't be mad. I know I promised, but I'll never do it again. I said, I'm not mad. You're not. It's okay. It really is not a problem. You're not upset? Of course not. Why would I be upset? Oh, it's 8:15. Let's go. And at this time, I lived in Rochester, New York. There's snow on the ground. I pick him up in his socks, and we go to school. I am not mad, but we're going. Now, I drop him off at school in his socks, carrying him the whole way. And I drive home, and I'm getting really tense about this decision. Here I am, in a custody battle with my ex-wife, dropping my kids off with no shoes. Imagine the headline of the paper, "Educator tortures his kids." It's scary. So then I wonder what his teacher would think. You know what one of the most difficult things about being an effective parent is? That sometimes we have to do things that other people don't understand, and we're afraid of what they'll think of us. So we do things that isn't always the best for the kid, but we look better. And it's the worst in the supermarket. When you go to the supermarket, you have to actually do things you know are wrong because everyone's watching you. So you've got to say, I can't take care of this kid who's whining. You give him something to shut him up just so you don't have to look bad. It's not, the kids know this. Supermarkets are places where kids learn blackmail. So I called this teacher and I said, Andrew Curwin does not have his sneakers today. Please don't tell him. He already knows. You know what the teacher would say? You don't have your sneakers. He's going to say, I know. I'm slob, I'm not stupid. He came home that night. He was not in a good mood. He did not talk to me. But the next morning, he had his sneakers. He did not die of pneumonia. He had his sneakers. He learned by my doing less, not more. Because I did not feel that he was going to suffer beyond what he could handle by being in socks for one day. Now this is hard to do as parents because we want to protect our children. And then we also want to teach them. So we rescue them from the situations they create, and then we get mad at them for having to make us do this, and we punish them. Sometimes a dose of reality is the best thing that can happen. I would not advocate this, and I don't mean this to be an advocate of this behavior, but I know kids that have made mistakes and gotten locked in jail for a night, and it's the best thing that ever happened to them. I mean, getting a permanent record so they can't work or go to school isn't so good. But just understanding that sometimes you can't get rescued, you got to live with what you do, is life's best lesson. And I want to say this with caution because I'm not recommending this, but sometimes we do too much to help them, and in the end we hurt them. So that's what I'm advocating. Now, a couple more examples. A friend of mine has a daughter, and this daughter would wake up every morning on Saturday, and she would go to the cupboard, and she would take out the Cheerios and put them in the Cheerios bowl, and put on cartoons, and she'd get dressed all by herself and spend the whole morning watching Cheerios until my friend woke up. And then on Monday through Friday, when my friend had to get to school because she's a teacher and couldn't get her, had a time limit, she had to get her kid to daycare, the kid didn't know how to get dressed anymore. I need help getting dressed, Mommy. I can't do it myself. I don't have time right now. Get dressed. I don't know how. I need help. Please help me. Crying. She's a 3-year-old. This went on for months until my friend understood that she was fighting a losing battle. So here's what she did. She wakes up in the morning, gets this little girl's clothes and puts them in a shopping bag and says to her, here's your clothes today. Get dressed whenever you want. So one day she takes the daughter, this first day, takes the daughter to daycare in her pajamas with a bag of clothes. That was the last day this happened. She just stopped fighting. This really works. So every time we can think of a way to do less, I think it's better than when we interfere, providing we make sure that people don't get hurt. The goal of us as parents, as I see it, is very difficult, especially in modern America. But I think it's clear when we get away through all of the junk. I learned this as my kids get older. Our goal, or my goal, I will say, you can decide this for yourself, is not to tell my kids who they should be or what they should do. It's to help them find the road that fits them and then get them to be good at who they already are. I don't own my kids. They are not my pets. They are not my toys. They are not mine in the sense that I own them. They come through me, I give them all the love and encouragement and support I can give them and hope they do well. And that's it. Then they go off and live their lives. And they come back to me as much as possible, and it's great. As my kids get older, they're becoming my best friends. I love being with my kids. I didn't when they were teenagers. But now I love them. They're fantastic. But they didn't become what my image was. They became what their image was. And I see my role as helping them to be good at that, not giving them a different path to take. It takes a long time to understand this because so many dreams I have for my kids, so many hopes. Yet in America today, for the first time in the history of this country, kids get less education and make less money than the generation before. So I'm worried. I want my kids to have a good life. I want them happy. I want them fulfilled. I want them to be good parents themselves. And it frightens me when I think of what might happen in their future. How can I get them on the right path? Is the question, and the answer is they have to do that themselves. I have to prepare them for the paths that they choose. I can't choose the path for them. When we give up thinking they're our possessions and start thinking of them as our children, we can do so much more for them. But it's difficult and we struggle. I'll give you an example of this that is on a lower scale. Just to show you what I mean, just with a household example that is not the most serious of all. This is also an example of what happens when you get older and you get a perspective of what really matters. I spent so many hours yelling at my kids to clean their room. Clean your room! How many of you have ever told your kids to clean their room? Okay? It is a useless activity. It's not worth the breath you take to say it. Now this might sound radical, but people here know exactly what I'm talking about. These are the people who have kids that have already left the house. Because kids don't learn to clean their room by you yelling at them to clean their room. They learn other things. All of the time I spent yelling at my kids to clean their room, if I could have that back now, I'd read them a story, I'd take a walk, I'd take them to a ball game. I'm not sure I'd take them to a Red Sox game, but I'd take them to a ball game. I just saw the Red Sox Saturday. Clemens lost in 5-1. I live in California, but I'm still a Red Sox fan. Anybody here a Red Sox fan? Tough to be a Red Sox fan. They're always in first place in April. Isn't it amazing? Because it doesn't matter what you teach them. When they leave the house, they're neater than they were with you anyway. Isn't this true? If they're not, it doesn't matter. Don't go there. It's just, there are so many things that are important. I don't see how this one is anymore. But I'll tell you what's important. Do you know what people fight over when they live together? How neat we should be. I've never known a couple in my life that had the same levels of neatness. There's always one that's neater than the other. So what's important to teach your kid? Be as neat as you, or how to get along with someone who has a different level than they do. What will save their marriage more? You can't teach them how to have a different level of neatness than you if you always use your standard. They have to develop their own. They can't do it unless they can live in a mess for a while and see the consequences. So on the short term, your house is neater by telling them to clean their room. And if people come over, you're not embarrassed. But in the long run, I'm not sure we help them. Plus, I believe that kids should occasionally have the right to control a space that no one else should say anything over. They should have that house be theirs as well as yours. Because they're not going to clean the other parts of the house if they don't feel they live there. If they think they're, renting it from you, it's different. It has to be their house too. They should have at least some space. Everybody in this room, I am sure, wishes you had one space that's yours that your spouse doesn't have any say over. It could be your desk. It could be the kitchen. It could be the work area. Who knows? But we all need at least one space in our life that if we want to leave things out for 3 weeks, it's okay. But kids get this? So it's tricky. Now, the other thing I believe is consequences. So I told my kids, eventually I learned this. It took a while, but I learned this. And I stopped fighting over it. I said, if you want to leave your room be messy, that is okay with me, but I won't go in there. I will not go in there. Shut the door, keep the room. If things start to move in there at night and make noises, then you live with the rats. You know, David's my oldest, he says, Dad, can you change the light bulb? I said, not in your life. You want me to go in your room? Clean it. But I'll never tell him he has to for me, it's for him. That's what I mean. You know what really helps kids learn to clean their room? When they find and discover the opposite sex and they invite them over. That doesn't. The first time David, when he was 7th grade, had a party, they had girls over, he asked me if he could use the vacuum cleaner. I said, David, I didn't think you knew what it was, let alone can you use it? Can you figure, let me tell you something about it. There's an off-on switch. That's how you do it. I said, you're going to vacuum your room? He said, well, I want to show my friends my posters. And I'm embarrassed to say this. So I said, you know, I might show my posters. My room's kind of messy too. He said, you want me to vacuum it? He vacuumed my room. It was great. I wanted to have a party every week. Then he got older, and then the parties changed, and that stopped. I always had a problem, however, with the common areas, the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, because they could stack stuff up there so badly that you can't even find the couch, let alone sit on it. You know this, what I'm talking about here? This is not fair. Mess your room or your space, but don't touch someone else's. And I had a great difficulty trying to keep the house clean. I couldn't think of a natural consequence until I discovered from a teacher who found the perfect consequence. She used to do this in a classroom. And I don't want to get into that example. I'll stay with the home one. What I did was I took a big green garbage bag and I said, I'm coming through every Saturday morning. Whatever's left in the common areas is going in the garbage bag. And I'm locking it in my closet for a week. And at the end of the week, you can take out anything you want, put it away. If you don't take it away, put it away, I'm taking that garbage bag and I'm giving it to charity. It's going to be clean one way or the other. Now, if you do this, it's easy to do in some ways. Because all you do is go to the house, throw stuff in the bag, lock it in your closet. They live without it. They learn that if you leave it out there, it's gone. At least for a while, enough to let it sink in. But there's a danger. When you buy your kid a $400 coat and they leave it outside and you put it in the bag and now you're going to give it to charity because they won't put it away. So you have to think this through a little bit. There are hidden consequences. You buy a kid a video game and now he doesn't want to put it away. Do you give it to charity? Sometimes I think the answer has to be yes, because that's a lesson they won't forget. But it's your money, so then you got to think about it. I'm not saying you should always do this. I think, though, if you really have something you don't want to give to charity, then you keep it and maybe give it to them later. But that becomes your responsibility, and you have to live with this. You can't force them to put it away, or you lose the benefit of having them see what their behavior is. Well, I did this, and I thought it was fantastic. But when I went to Japan on that trip I told you about earlier, I took Andrew, King Slob. I told this strategy to 150 American teachers who were stationed in Japan at a military bases who came to the session. And I'm bragging about this great technique like I know something. And Andrew is in the front row laughing at me. And during a break he says, Dad, come here, come here. I said, what? Why were you laughing? He said, because that technique never works. I said, it always works. He said, He said, every time you left the house to do the laundry, go shopping, whatever, we knew you hid the key. You think we know where the key was? We went in the closet, we took out what we wanted, and at the end of every week, you threw out our trash for us. You can't beat teenagers. They're too fast. Well, David and his room eventually got so bad that I had problems with laundry. How many people in this room ever go to someone's room, a kid I mean, to find their laundry? Anyone do this? This is dangerous. And I didn't care if he kept his room messy, but I did care that I had to go in there. So eventually I learned something about consequences. I said, I am willing to do laundry for you, but I am not willing to go and find it. Here's how bad it was. When I first moved to California, I told you I had very little money. I could not afford to buy beds. So I bought Japanese futons. Anyone know what they are? They're right on the floor. He got his dirty clothes under his bed. It was right on the floor. How do you do this? Lift up your bed and stuck your laundry under there? How can you get your dirty laundry under a bed that's right on the floor? I couldn't figure it out. He didn't know either. I said, you better clean up. There's someone else living here that you don't know about. So I made this rule. I will wash what you put in the hamper. And if it doesn't go in the hamper, I'm not washing it. Well, one day he put something in the hamper and I washed it. A week later he put something else and I washed that. Now, if he was a human being, he would have realized within about a week he did not have clean clothes. But he was a teenager, so it took about a month. I think he had class pictures or something. I don't know what made him realize that his clothes were starting to get a little sticky. He said, Dad, I don't have any clean clothes. And because we're using consequences, not punishments, I said, you're right, you don't. He said, I need more. I need some clothes. I said, you're right. See you around, pal. Did not argue. I agree with him. So he learned. What he did was, maybe some of you have done this, you had the same experience, he took everything you owned, clean, dirty, anything, and stuffed it in the hamper. Said, here's everything in the hamper. His books are in there, his homework, everything. So here's where he got his first laundry lesson, which was, I am not going to sort your laundry. I think doing someone's laundry is really hard, but sorting someone's laundry is a task that no one should have to do unless they like it, which I yet to meet this person. I think people can cooperate and do things for each other and make trade-offs, but that's a hard one. So I said to David, son, laundry is like computers. Garbage in equals garbage out. What you give me is what you get back. I am not going to sort your laundry. I'm going to wash it, dry it, and give it to you. But I want you to learn something about laundry, so here's some good advice. If you want your socks to rot, leave them in little balls. If you want your clothes to have lint all over them, leave stuff in your pockets. If you want your clothes to be wrinkled, make sure the underpants are half over the overpants and half inside out and aren't separated. Now, if you just want to use this strategy to teach your kids some responsibility, two things to always remember. Never do your laundry at the same time as theirs. Do yours first, and then clean out the washer like a week later to make sure there's nothing in there that you don't expect. Make sure there's nothing moving in there. So I do this, and one day he comes home from school and his shirt's inside out. He says, Dad, I have an inside out shirt. And all I had to say, you're right, you do. He said, I'm wearing this out shirt. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a great opportunity to be sarcastic. I can really hit him with this one. I can say, is that what the new thing? Hats backwards, shirts inside out, really cool. See, if it was me and I saw my shirt inside out, I'd go to the bathroom and fix it before anyone else saw it. I don't know about you, but teenagers don't do this. They wait all day to yell at you. So it was hard, but he eventually learned. On the other hand, I do not want to give the impression that I do it right all the time. I think I've let you know that I don't. And sometimes the mistakes I made were better teachers than the right things I did. And I want to give you an example of how I could have done it better. One day, I am baking. And in San Francisco, in the summer, it's very foggy, and there's a lot of moisture in the air. It's not humid like this, but there's still moisture. And wooden cabinets swell, and they're hard to open. And I'm trying to open this drawer to get something, and it won't come. And I'm like this, pulling on my foot on the thing. Ugh! And David, my shadow, comes in to see what I'm doing, and gets out like this to see what's going on. Just then, the drawer gives way, comes flying out, smashes his nose, and it starts to bleed. Not serious. In sports, it's called a stinger. You take a good pop, it hurts for a second, but then you go back, it's okay. Something like that. And when this happened, I kind of explained to him it's not a good idea. I used just a hint of Boston sarcasm. I wasn't really vicious, but I let him know I didn't like it. I said, you're always sticking your nose in my business, now it's bleeding, it serves you right. And he said, every time I try to help you, you get mad at me, and I'm never going to help you again. So I used a slight bit of sarcasm and said, what were you going to do, open the drawer with your nose? And he gets really mad and says, I know what you needed. And I knew where it was in the drawer. And after you opened it, I was going to give it to you so you didn't have to search. That drawer's really messy. I was in it yesterday. I almost said, that's why it's messy, isn't it? But I just refrained. And he said, and I know what you wanted. And he reaches in, and out of this mess of things, pulls out the spatula that I was actually looking for and says, here, and you don't appreciate me. And he slams the door and runs to his room, and we didn't talk for about 3 days, because I was angry and so was he. If I had just shut up and said nothing, or if I said, are you okay? Do you need any help? He would have learned without any help from me, you don't put your nose in front of a drawer that moves fast. He didn't need me to tell him. He already figured this out all by himself. But when I said this to him, now I attacked his dignity, so now we had an argument. And I believe that most arguments between parents are not necessary because the kids already learned it by the time you tell them. But it's hard not to, because we want them to be the way we want them to be. We own them. They're our pets. Be this way. It is so hard. And I will tell you in all honesty that I think 60 to 70% of the time I would do it right 10 years ago. And after writing 3 more books about this and really thinking about this and talking about it all the time, I've got up to 70%. That means 30% of the time I do things that I'm ashamed of. And I'm trying to get to 80% before I die. I will not go to try to get to 100%. I will never challenge the gods. I can't get that good. So when I tell you these things tonight, I don't want you to leave here and say, I'm doing it wrong, I should be ashamed of myself. Sometimes we hear things and we say, I could do it better. That's okay, but don't feel that, this is assuming you agree with me. You might be saying, this guy's a real jerk, he doesn't know what he's talking about, in which case you'll leave here without any guilt at all. I'm not here to tell you you're doing it wrong. I'm here to tell you to think about these things, and sometimes you'll find you're doing it better and it will help you. So this is what we strive for, to help kids to become responsible human beings. We want them to think about what they do. We want them to experience the consequences of their actions. We want them to learn from life. We want them not simply to think it's okay to get away with something if you don't get caught, but if you don't do it, if you do something wrong, it's wrong whether you get caught or not, which requires more than punishment. We really want kids to understand that they have to make a contribution to this world as well as take from it. And that if everybody felt this way, we can all get along better. And it isn't that hard to do if we understand our goal as parents. It's to let them see by how we treat them. And I think we can do it. I think we do it a lot. This is what we try to have teachers do in school. We want parents to do the same thing. And I think if kids get the consistent message everywhere that values should guide our behavior, not fear of getting in trouble, then everybody will be better off. Anyway, I'm going to stop right now and spend the next 10 minutes taking questions if anybody has them. Let me give you just one warning. It's very difficult for me to answer a question about your kid if I don't know your kid. So I'm willing to take a stab at it, but what I'll do is generalize. I will not talk about your specific situation as much as something that can be generalized for everybody, because you cannot call a doctor and say, I have a stomach ache, and he prescribes over the phone without seeing you. He's got to examine you. And I think it's dangerous for people to give advice for kids they don't know. And I'm not a big fan of talk show therapy. Okay, does anybody have a question you'd like to ask? Yes?
I do. I understand completely about the consequences.
Can I just do one thing?
The thing that I was experiencing today that I have a difficult time with my son is asking him not to jump on the couch, or my husband's doing some work in this addition. I asked him numerous times today not to go in there and play with the hammer and this, and he wasn't listening, so I resorted to giving him timeouts, which of course as soon as he came out it was like na, jumping on the couch, running in the room. And today was my cleaning day, so it was it was a battle, just the whole entire day. So what kind of consequence would you get for that?
How old is he again?
3.
3. Okay. 3-year-olds, because of their age, sometimes it's more difficult. But then they get to be 5, and that's more difficult. Then they get to be 10, that's difficult. At 15, it's impossible. I mean, I don't think of age as an excuse. What I'd recommend you to think about is, how much pleasure is he getting out of annoying you?
A tremendous amount.
So the game is how to make mommy pay attention to me. Without seeing this, and I could be wrong, I mean, this is my guess. So what he wants is you. He's not trying to misbehave, he's trying to get you back to him. And you're trying to, the cleaning lady's coming, he has you over the barrel. So what I'd recommend is that you'd say something like that. What's his name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy, I think you want mommy right now, don't you? Wouldn't you like mommy to play with you? Is that what you really want? Well, why don't we play something for a little while, and then mommy's going to have some time, and then we'll play again. And do this with him, and then let him be by himself, maybe as a timeout, or maybe just separate from you, and then play with him again. And let him know that this will happen, and not the next time, because he might still have learned he can get more of your attention by jumping around. In 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe a month, he'll learn he gets more of you by not doing those things than when he does them. So there's a better payoff to not do them. But right now, he has you hopping.
Right.
It's a great game. You're his toy.
Right.
And he knows it. Kids are so smart when it comes to, how can I get mommy to pay attention to me? Be a brat. It works. So he's learned this, and this will take some time to change. It won't happen overnight, but I believe that's the best strategy, is let him know he can get your attention without having to do those things. And then he won't need to do them as much. Now, that's assuming this is the reason. He might just like doing those things and irrelevant to you, which would have a different answer. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Can you say it nice and loud so I can hear you?
What do you do when a child acts in a way that makes you wonder whether they have the right values in a certain situation?
Give me an example.
My 7-year-old bullying for the little sister to the point of the little sister really crying, very sad, and the 7-year-old smiling.
How old is the little sister?
Almost 4.
Okay. This is a real hard one to answer because I don't know these kids. But in general,
They're nice kids.
the answer is, I'm not sure. The question was, let me repeat the question for those of you that couldn't hear it. What do I do with a 7-year-old boy who's bullying his 4-year-old sister to the point where she cries even sometimes, and he smiles? And I'm saying I'm not sure how I would deal with that unless I really could watch them, because I'd have to know what he's getting out of doing this. But let me give you a possibility. Again, this is a rough guess. It could very well be, well, first of all, let me tell you this. Siblings fight. It's normal, and it happens all the time. And it's important that they do this, because there's a very valuable learning they're getting they can't get anywhere else. When a kid fights with his brother or sister, or her brother or sister, they have to face them tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. So no matter how bad it gets between them, they got to work it out, because they're not leaving each other. So what happens is, when they argue, it's actually learning how to deal with aggression and anger, because eventually these are skills they're going to need. If we interfere and stop it, then they don't learn the skill. And sometimes the best answer is to let them go through this for a while, as long as nobody's getting hurt, which I would have I have to put a limit. Because he knows he has to live with her. She's going to be there tomorrow. He has a built-in restraint. And maybe, if you do a little bit less, I'm saying this with caution, he will learn that he can't treat her that way without any help from you. It's possible. And these skills come in very handy when these kids get older and now have to deal with strangers. And the research shows very clearly that those kids who interfered less with their siblings are better with people that they're not related to than those that the parents interfered with. Now, I studied this years ago, and every time my kids fought with each other, I said to myself, don't interfere. And sometimes I was able not to, but most of the time I couldn't take it. I was afraid someone was going to get killed. But every time I didn't interfere, there was a built-in mechanism. The more I interfered, the further it went. So one suggestion is to bite the bullet and hope the kid doesn't murder her or puts her in the hospital and see what happens. This is hard to do. I say this, you got to be careful with this because you want to make sure no one gets hurt, but it might be your best answer. And the other thing I want to say is the 4-year-old might be generating it all. You don't know for sure. You don't see what precipitates it. You come in on the crisis, but you don't see the buildup. And it might be the 4-year-old that has to stop doing stuff. One reason this sometimes happens is because when kids have younger brothers or sisters, when they're first born, it's a real problem for them. You have a 3-year-old son, and now a new baby comes in, the new daughter. When the parents come home from work, say the father or the mother comes home from work, they go right for the baby. But they used to go right for the 3-year-old. Now, I will tell you right now, for those of you that have like a newborn and another kid, the newborn won't miss you, but the 3-year-old will. The newborn doesn't have any idea that you're not there until you show up, but the 3-year-old will. Stop for a half hour and spend some time with the older kid, then go to the newborn, and you'll prevent a lot of sibling rivalry. And take the kid with you, and take the 3-year-old and say, show me what you like most, show me your sister, or show me your brother. You know, what does he do? So what did he do today? And get the kid involved in the process of the family without making it competitive. But if you go to the newborn, the kid says, I used to be the one, now I'm ignored. Almost every kid that ever talks about this says, my parents used to love me, but now they love the other one. And I think by the time they get to the age you're saying, some of this is a overflow. Okay, anyone else have a question? Yes?
Someone once said to me, and I wanted to say it to you and get your reaction to it. They said that it was the responsibility, note that word, of children to get everything they can out of their parents, and it's their parents' responsibility to say no.
He said he heard somewhere once my reaction, it's the responsibility of children to get everything they can from their parents, and it's the responsibility of parents to say no. I would say that's a game we play, but I wouldn't say responsibility. I think that's pretty cynical. Here's the way I see it. I'm going to take this a different view, a different cut at this issue. Being a parent, no matter what decision I make, I second guess myself like it's the wrong thing, especially when it comes to things. My kid says he wants something. If I get it for him, I think I'm spoiling him, and I wish I hadn't. If I don't, I think I'm being mean. No matter which way I do it, the other side looks better. And I'm always in conflict.
I didn't mean things, I meant like freedoms or watching television.
Okay, so you're talking about privileges and rules. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. I wasn't referring to material.
Okay, I'm going to make this the last question because it's just about time. We were supposed to stop at 9. The responsibility of a parent is to teach his kids to make good choices. It's the responsibility of the kid to learn how. And the way we do this is by telling kids what our limits are and then always giving them some choices about what to do within the limit. Kids need to make decisions, and we need to tell them where the line is. If we don't tell them what the line is, they keep searching for it. If we don't let them make decisions, they don't learn how to think. Thinking is not a spectator sport. You've got to do it to learn it. You make choices and get good at it by having choices to make. So just one brief example. I learned this taking my kids to Fenway Park when I lived in East Coast. 3 sons on the way to Fenway Park. Do you know that you can spend $500 before you get into the stadium if you buy everything they point to? I want that Kyle Yastrzemski shirt. Wade Boggs autographed glove, $8,000. Daddy, I want it, you promised. And what I found myself doing was going from saying, no, don't ask. One more time you ask, we're going home. To saying, okay, I hate saying no and I hate saying yes. They both are miserable choices. Do you know what I mean? If you say yes, what am I doing with my kids? I'm teaching they can have whatever they point to. If you say no, you're an ogre. You're ruining the time, and it's constant battle. And I hated it. So I gave each kid $10. And I said, you can buy anything that you want, but when the money's over, it's gone. So they go into the Fenway Park, we sit down, and for 7 innings, my 2 youngest are figuring what to buy. Between innings, they're running around doing things. Now, they were only 4 and 6 and 8 at the time, 3 sons. The 4-year-old and the 6-year-old were so good at math. This is the best math lesson on earth. Because one kid spent $9.95 and the other $9.98. And they had taxes to figure out. They were doing percentages. But they figured this out. The oldest didn't spend the money. He kept it for himself. And he called his friend that night. I said, I get to go to a baseball game and they made $10. One I'm saying here is, when I said to them, you can't spend more than $10, that's a limit. But I said, you can spend anything you want to, that's a choice. And you can do this with everything in discipline in the home. From time, you have to be home by 10, but you can go to these many places. You can do it this way, but within that, it's your choice. So I disagree. You give them the limits of what you can live with. That's how they learn what the lines are, and then you give them a significant, real choice of how to do it. That's how they learn responsibility. It's the combination of both. Giving kids freedom is a tragedy. Not letting them think is a tragedy. You need to do it a different way. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Thanks very much. I hope you had something out of this. Thank you. Thanks. Good to see you. You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Curwin. And just two housekeeping items. The evaluation forms, if you could please fill them out and leave them on the table. We have refreshments outside. I'm pleased to announce that Dr. Curwin will be coming back to our district. For teachers in the district, there'll be an in-service day, March 6th, where what he will do is discipline with dignity. Thanks again, and thanks for coming.
Family to see Circus Smirkus, August 16, 17, and 18 at Montpelier High School, Montpelier, Vermont. For tickets, call 802-864-6044.
Janine woke up in a cold sweat. She remembered that she'd gone to a party the night before and gotten smashed out of her mind. The question is, who was this guy in her bathroom? What did he look like? What had they done? How had she gotten herself into this mess? What about AIDS? Then, much to her relief, Janine realized that unlike the rest of us, she was just a cartoon. Get high, get stupid, get AIDS.